The viewport exploded in a cascade of warning lights, bathing the cockpit in crimson urgency. Marcus Webb's calloused hands flew across the control panel, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. The freighter Wandering Echo shuddered violently, metal groaning like a wounded beast as it plummeted through the atmosphere of an uncharted world. Hull breach in sectors 4 and 7. Marcus shouted over the screaming alarms. I'm losing hydraulics. Beside him, Nija's luminous silver-blue hands moved with impossible grace across her navigation console, her violet eyes reflecting data streams that would overwhelm most beings. The Valorian woman's delicate antennae twin crystalline. Appendages that rose from her temples trembled as she calculated trajectories at superhuman speed. There's a clearing. 17 degrees north-northwest, she said, her voice carrying that melodic quality that made even dire warnings sound like poetry. If you can maintain this angle for another 40 seconds. 40 seconds. Marcus barked out a laugh that held no humor. Lady, I'll be lucky if this bucket holds together for 10. The ship lurched sideways. Marcus felt his stomach drop as gravity momentarily released its hold. Through the cracked viewport, he caught glimpses of the planet below, a tapestry of amber jungles and violet rock formations. Utterly alien and terrifyingly close. Naya's hand shot out, gripping his forearm. Even through the chaos, Marcus felt the coolness of her touch, the way her skin seemed to pulse with faint bioluminescence. Her telepathic abilities couldn't help with mechanical failures, but somehow her presence steadied him. Marcus. She spoke his name with quiet intensity. You can do this. Follow my coordinates. Trust me. He met her gaze for a heartbeat. Those violet eyes held something he couldn't quite name. Confidence, certainly, but also something deeper. Something that made him want to prove her faith wasn't misplaced. Hang on, he growled, yanking the control yoke hard to port. The Wandering Echo responded sluggishly, fighting him every centimeter. The planet's gravity had them now, an inexorable pull that no amount of failing thrusters could fully counter. But Marcus had spent 15 years keeping broken ships flying against impossible odds. This would not be the mission that killed him. The clearing Nija had spotted rushed up to meet them. Marcus could see it now, a relatively flat expanse, surrounded by towering trees with orange bark and leaves that shimmered like copper pennies. He killed what little remained of their forward thrust, angling for a belly landing. Brace, he roared. The impact came like a giant's fist. Metal shrieked. Sparks exploded across the console. Marcus felt himself thrown forward against his restraints hard enough to drive the air from his lungs. The ship skipped once, twice, plowing through alien vegetation. A massive tree loomed ahead. Marcus knew with crystal certainty they were going to hit it. The collision snapped his head back. Darkness crept in at the edges of his vision. The last thing he heard was Nija calling his name. Marcus woke to pain sharp and immediate in his ribs, dull and throbbing in his head. He groaned, trying to orient himself. The cockpit was a disaster zone. Half the ceiling panels had collapsed and acrid smoke curled through the air. Sparks still danced from severed wiring. Marcus. Marcus, can you hear me? Nija's face swam into focus above him. Her antenna glowed softly, providing light in the darkened space. There was a cut along her cheekbone, dark purple blood so different from his own, red trailing down to her jaw. But her eyes were clear and focused on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. Yeah, he rasped. Yeah, I'm here. You okay? I'm functional. The ghost of a smile touched her lips. You landed us alive. That was impressive piloting. Impressive would have been not crashing at all. Marcus tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. His ribs screamed in protest. Ah, hell. Nija's cool hands pressed gently against his chest, easing him back. Don't move yet. You may have fractures. I need to assess. I'm fine, Marcus insisted, though every breath suggested otherwise. He looked around at the wreckage of their ship. But the Echo isn't. She's done. We'll be lucky if we can salvage the emergency beacon. Nija sat back on her heels, following his gaze. In the dim emergency lighting, her silver-blue skin seemed to shimmer. Those intricate patterns of bioluminescence that marked her people pulsing faintly beneath the surface. Marcus had worked with aliens before. It was impossible not to in the shipping lanes. Between colony worlds, but he'd never been alone with one. Never been this close. And we focus on survival first, Nija said, her voice carrying that unshakable calm that seemed to define her. Shelter, water, food. Then we repair what we can. Marcus finally managed to pull himself upright, biting back a curse at the pain. You sound like you've done this before. I've navigated through 17 star systems and survived situations that would make your hair turn white. Marcus Webb. There was a hint of amusement in her tone now. A temporary stay on an uncharted planet is merely convenient. He couldn't help the short laugh that escaped him, even though it made his ribs ache. Inconvenient, right? I like your style, Nija. She extended her hand to help him stand. When his rough, calloused palm met her smooth, cool skin, something passed between them, not her telepathy, but something more fundamental. Recognition, perhaps. Two people utterly out of their element, utterly dependent on each other. Together, they surveyed the damage. The main cabin was relatively intact, though supplies were scattered everywhere. The engineering section was a total loss. Collapsed bulkheads and twisted metal made it impassable. But the emergency locker was accessible, and that was something. We'll need to move before nightfall, Nija said. Her antennae twitching, as if sensing something Marcus couldn't. I don't know what this planet's fauna is like, but I can feel movement in the jungle. Large things. Marcus retrieved a plasma cutter and a field kit from the emergency locker, checking the charge on both. Then let's grab what we can carry and find somewhere defensible. You sense water nearby? Nija closed her eyes, her antenna extending fully. The Valorian gift of environmental telepathy was one Marcus had read about but never witnessed. After a moment, she pointed southwest. There's a water source, perhaps 2 kilometers in that direction, and something else. Structures, maybe. Very old. Made of stone ruins? Marcus raised an eyebrow. This planet's supposed to be uninhabited. Supposed to be, Nija agreed, opening her eyes. But the universe is full of surprises. They worked quickly, gathering supplies. Emergency rations, water purification tablets, a portable power cell, medical supplies, and basic survival gear. Marcus fashioned a makeshift pack from cargo netting, dividing the weight between them. Nija moved with efficient grace, never wasting emotion. As they prepared to leave the wreckage of the wandering Echo, Marcus paused at the airlock. The ship had been his home for 3 years, his livelihood, his escape from a past he'd rather forget. Now, it was just twisted metal and broken dreams. Hey! Nija's voice was soft beside him. When he turned, he found her watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. We survived. That's what matters. The rest we'll figure out together. Together. The words settled between them with unexpected weight. Marcus nodded, shouldering his pack. Together, then, lead the way, navigator. The alien sun was descending toward the horizon, painting the copper-leafed canopy in shades of golden rust. As they stepped out of the ship and into the jungle, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that their crash was only the beginning. This planet held secrets, and he and Nija were about to discover them. Whether they'd survive those discoveries was another question entirely. The jungle closed around them, like a living thing, and their journey into the unknown truly began. The jungle of Xanthor 7 was nothing like the wilderness Hollis Marcus had studied during his academy days. This was a world that defied Earth-based biology, a riot of colors and sounds that seemed almost deliberately alien. As he and Nija pushed through the dense undergrowth, copper leaves brushing against their arms, he found himself constantly looking over his shoulder. "You're anxious," Nija observed, not breaking stride. Her antennae swept back and forth, reading the environment in ways Marcus could only imagine. "Cautious," he corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" A hint of amusement colored her voice. "Your heart rate has increased by 20%. Your pupils are dilated. You're okay? Okay?" Marcus held up a hand. "Forgot I was traveling with a living bioscanner." "Yes, I'm nervous. This place gives me the creeps." Nija paused, turning to face him fully. In the dappled light filtering through the canopy, her silver-blue skin seemed to glow from within. I'm nervous too, Marcus. But fear shared is fear diminished. That's what my people believe. Something in her admission made Marcus relax slightly. It was easy to forget that beneath her calm exterior and alien grace, Nija was just as stranded as he was. Just as vulnerable. Your people have a saying for everything, don't they? He asked, resuming their trek. Thousands of years of civilization will do that. She moved ahead of him, her movements fluid and silent where his were clumsy and loud. We've had time to contemplate existence. What sayings do humans have? Marcus thought for a moment, ducking under a low-hanging branch covered in moss that pulsed with faint orange light. My grandfather used to say, when you're going through hell, keep going. Never understood it as a kid. Makes more sense now. Wise words, Nija murmured. They walked in companionable silence for another half-hour. Following Nija's innate sense of the water source she'd detected, the jungle grew denser, the sounds more pronounced. Chittering calls echoed from the canopy above creatures Marcus couldn't see, but could feel watching them. Occasionally, something large would move through the underbrush parallel to their path. Never showing itself, but making its presence. Known the sun was nearly set when they finally broke through a wall of violet-tinged ferns into a clearing that stole Marcus's breath. By all the stars, he whispered. Before them lay ruins ancient and magnificent. Stone structures rose from the jungle floor, half consumed by vegetation but still maintaining an undeniable grandeur. Archways carved with intricate symbols framed a central plaza, where a fountain still trickled water from the mouth of some long-forgotten creature. The stones themselves seemed to absorb the fading sunlight, then release it as a soft, ethereal glow. This is what I sensed, Nija said, her voice filled with wonder. But I didn't expect. This level of preservation. Marcus approached the fountain cautiously, his engineer's mind cataloging details. The water looked clear, and his portable scanner confirmed it was safe to drink. But more than that, the technology, if it could be called that, keeping the fountain running after what must have been centuries, was beyond his understanding. Who built this? He asked, running his hand along the carved stone. The symbols seemed to shift under his touch, though he knew that had to be a trick of the light. A question we may never answer. Naya knelt beside the fountain, cupping water in her hands. She drank, then closed her eyes. But they were advanced. I can feel echoes. Not thoughts exactly, but impressions. Joy, community, loss. Marcus watched her, fascinated by the way her antennae glowed brighter when she used her telepathic abilities. Can you read the past? Not read. Sense. She opened her eyes, looking at him. Everything leaves an imprint, Marcus. Especially strong emotions. This place was loved, and then abandoned. A chill ran down his spine despite the warm air. Why abandon? That I cannot tell. Night fell rapidly in the alien jungle, and with it came transformation. The bioluminescent properties Marcus had noticed earlier in individual plants now revealed themselves in full glory. The entire clearing blazed with gentle light, blues and greens and purples that pulsed in slow hypnotic rhythms. The ruins themselves seemed to come alive, their stones glowing from within. It's beautiful, Nija breathed, standing beside him. The lights reflected in her violet eyes, and Marcus found himself staring at her profile longer than was probably polite. Yeah, he agreed softly. Beautiful. They set up camp in one of the more intact structures, a circular building with most of its roof still present. Marcus used the plasma cutter to clear away some vegetation, while Nija arranged their supplies with methodical efficiency. By the time they had a basic shelter established, 3 of Xanthro 7's 4 moons had risen. Casting their light through gaps in the roof, Marcus activated a small heating element from their survival kit, more for comfort than necessity. The night air was warm, but there was something primally reassuring about having a light source. How long do you think before someone finds us? He asked, chewing on a ration bar that tasted like compressed cardboard. Nija sat across from him. Her legs folded in a position that would have been uncomfortable for a human. The Echo was off standard shipping lanes. We were 3 days from the nearest station. If someone noticed we didn't arrive on schedule, she paused. A week, maybe 2 weeks. Marcus let out a long breath. Well, I've had worse assignments. Have you? Nija tilted her head. A gesture he was learning meant curiosity. Tell me about them. And so he did. As the alien night deepened around them, Marcus found himself talking about things he rarely shared. He told her about his early days as a junior engineer on a mining colony, where equipment failures could mean death by vacuum. He spoke of the accident that had scarred his left shoulder, the result of a coolant leak he'd barely survived. He even touched on why he'd left corporate. Shipping for the life of an independent freighter captain, a messy situation, involving embezzlement charges that weren't technically his fault but had destroyed his reputation. Nonetheless, it's what I've been running ever since, he concluded. Surprised at how much he'd revealed, the Echo was supposed to be a fresh start. Guessed the universe had other plans. Nija had listened without interruption, her expression difficult to read in the shifting bioluminescent light. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle. Running isn't always cowardice, Marcus. Sometimes it's survival. Sometimes we need distance to understand what we're running from. What about you? He asked, eager to shift focus. What's a Valorian navigator doing on a human freighter in the middle of nowhere? A shadow crossed her face. My own form of running, perhaps? She was quiet for so long that Marcus thought she wouldn't elaborate. Then, slowly, she began to speak. On Valoria, paths are chosen young. Very young. Your genetic markers, your telepathic aptitude, your family lineage, these things determine your future before you can even voice a preference. Her antennae dimmed slightly. I was designated for the Harmonious Council. A great honor. A lifetime of meditation and governance, and slow, careful thought. But you wanted to explore, Marcus guessed. A sad smile touched her lips. I wanted to see the stars up close. To navigate between worlds, not just contemplate them. My family was displeased. In Valorian culture, rejecting your designated path is considered a rejection of harmony itself, a form of chaos. So you left, I left. She met his gaze. I've been navigating commercial vessels for 3 cycles now. My family hasn't spoken to me since. Marcus felt a kinship with her, then 2 outcasts from their respective societies, thrown together by fate. Their loss, he said firmly. Best navigator I've ever worked with. I've worked with Plentinias, bioluminescence brightened, a blush equivalent, he realized with fascination. You've only worked with me for 1 voyage, Marcus. And it was going perfectly until we crashed. He grinned. Which wasn't your fault, by the way. That engine failure was years in the making. I've been patching that reactor together with spare parts in prayer. She laughed a sound like wind chimes that made something warm unfurl in Marcus's chest. Prayer. Does that work for human engineering? About as well as anything else. They talked long into the night, their conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Marcus learned about Valorian, its festivals where entire cities would synchronize their bioluminescence in patterns visible from space. Nija listened with genuine interest as he described Earth's oceans, a concept foreign to her desert world upbringing. They discovered shared loves both had a weakness for ancient music. Though their definitions of ancient differed by several thousand years, at some point, without either of them quite noticing when, they'd moved closer together. The heating element cast a small circle of warmth, and they sat within it, shoulders nearly touching. Marcus, Nija said suddenly, her antennae standing straight up in alarm. Something's coming. He was on his feet instantly, plasma cutter in hand. Where? Multiple sources surrounding us. Our eyes were distant, reading signals he couldn't perceive. Large, predatory. There the roar cut through the night like a blade. It came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing off the ancient stones. Marcus's blood ran cold as he saw them shapes moving in the darkness beyond their shelter. Large shapes easily twice his height, with eyes that reflected the bioluminescent light in shades of hungry amber. The structured Nija hissed, grabbing his arm. They won't enter the structure. How do you know? I don't. But look, no claw marks on the interior stones. These ruins have stood for ages. If predators used them as dens, there would be signs. It was thin logic, but Marcus had nothing better. They retreated deeper into the circular building as the creatures prowled outside. He caught glimpses of them between gaps in the walls, six-legged things with serpentine bodies covered in scaled armor that seemed to shift color in the bioluminescent light. Their heads were dominated by massive jaws filled with crystalline teeth. One of them approached the entrance, its massive head lowering to peer inside. Marcus raised the plasma cutter, knowing it would do little against something that size. The creature stopped at the threshold. Its nostrils flared, scenting them. Then, inexplicably, it backed away, releasing a frustrated growl. "They won't enter," Nija whispered, relief flooding her voice. "The ruins. There's something about them. The creatures fear them." They waited for what felt like hours while the pack circled their shelter, lesting the perimeter but never crossing into the ruins proper. Eventually, as the fourth moon rose, the creatures lost interest and melted back into the jungle. Marcus realized he was shaking. That was too close, but we're safe. Nija's hand found his in the darkness, squeezing gently. Together, we're safe. The touch lingered longer than necessary. When Marcus finally looked down at their joined hands as dark and scarred, hers luminous and smooth, he felt something shift between them. Something that went beyond to survivors seeking comfort. "Nija," he began, his voice rough. She looked up at him, and in the glow of her antennae, he saw his own uncertainty reflected back. The space between them felt charged, electric. He was acutely aware of every point where their bodies were almost touching, of the rhythm of her breathing, of the way her bioluminescent patterns pulsed faster. "We should rest," she said finally, but made no move to pull away. "We'll need our strength for tomorrow, right? Rest?" Marcus swallowed hard, forcing himself to step back. "I'll take first watch. No need. I'll sense if anything approaches again." They settled into their makeshift bed's emergency, thermal blankets spread over cushions of gathered moss. The space was small, and they lay closer than either would have chosen under other circumstances. Marcus could hear Nija's breathing, could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "Marcus." Her voice came soft in the darkness. "Yeah. Thank you. For landing the ship, for getting us here alive. For everything." He turned his head to find her already looking at him, her eyes luminous in the dark. "We're a team, remember? You sense the danger. I handle the mechanical disasters. Good division of labor." She smiled, and it was the last thing he saw before exhaustion finally claimed Himnaya's smile. Soft and genuine, in a circle of alien ruins on a planet far from home, as Marcus drifted into sleep. His last coherent thought was how right it felt to have her nearby, how the isolation of their situation somehow felt less lonely with her presence. How, despite everything, he wouldn't want to be stranded with anyone else. In the morning, everything would become more complicated. But for now, beneath the glow of foreign moons and surrounded by ancient mysteries, they found peace in the simple fact of survival. Together.